Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on when you're watching this. That right there was a reference to a Minecraft YouTuber I used to watch. Regardless, today I'm talking about Elemental, a Pixar animation that I honestly did not know was a thing. But recently, I watched it with a friend of mine over Discord through Disney Plus. Apparently, this was advertised everywhere on bus stops and all kinds of things, but I haven't been in the city or America since like 2018 or something, so I didn't see any of that. You basically have to use digital. But algorithms go bird, so I never got recommended this at all. The only way I saw, the only way I interacted with this before like a day ago or two was people making videos about, well, one video in particular, about two actually, I didn't watch one of them, about how it bombed at the box office. It just didn't succeed. And later on, I also watched a video by Moist Critical that said it came back. Hoorah. Um, but apparently it was advertised in a weird way. And again, I never saw anything. I actually saw the advertising way after. Um, Apparently on TikTok and Twitter, they were using the characters Claude in a goofy, laugh, awe, entertaining way to try and boost the advertising after the first failure. And the way it was advertised before that made people have a not negative, but not caring attitude towards the film, which is arguably worse. It's you might actually get more attention on your film if people just don't like it than if they don't care. But people thought generally that it was generic. Water, fire, love story. Oh no, we can't be together. You're water and I'm fire, and racism bad. And people felt through the trailer that they've seen this kind of story tons and tons and tons of times before, which you can't blame them. All right, that kind of thing is ancient. All right, like my generation and the generation before and the generation before, maybe all the way to Gen X, maybe even boomers, I think grew up with like things like Shakespeare, forbidden love stories, and all of the evolutions of those things. So people just didn't really feel as if they had a reason to go to theaters. And there are probably other factors as well, with theaters being very, you know, not as much of a thing because of the pandemic. And it absolutely failed at the box office. People kind of expected it. Some people, were sad or laughing at fucking Disney burning. Um, but yeah, I watched it recently with a friend of mine, and it was lovely. It was a nice little beautiful story. Uh, the story starts out with this little fire elemental, these little fire elementals, Bernie Lumen and Cinder Lumen. All right, are the two characters, and Cinder is pregnant, and they move into this new world, this big city with all of the waves of elementals coming into the city. It's kind of not built for the fire people. All right, there's a lot of water, there's a lot of infrastructure just not really built with them in mind. Which makes sense since the first people were water, and then the second wave were plants, and then wind. And, these little fire guys, they moved to this new world, this new city, for to start a new life, to have a better life. It is literally used in the movie, the word better life. And they walk around a little bit, all grumpy. All right, the husband, in this case Bernie, is grumpy and stuff, and trying to find a little place to rent and have his pregnant wife rest. And they find a little place that will keep them, a little rundown shop for sale, and they buy it and they start setting up there and preserving their culture, which they brought with them. All right, authentic uh, Flame Town or Fire City or Fire Town, Fireville, it's not important. Authentic, where they came from, Firelands, cuisine, and items. And they're raising their little daughter, our main character, Ember Bloom, and, preparing her to take on the family traditions and the shop. All right, this shop will be yours when you're ready. All right, it's kind of the thing they've been saying to her ever since she was a wee little flame. All right, and it's very beautifully 3D animated with all of the effects and stuff. It's a very simple story, I will add, but I think it is beautiful in its simplicity. Now, if you ask me if I would go and go to the movie theater to watch this, or purchase a subscription to watch this, I probably would not have, but based off the advertising. In hindsight, would I have? Maybe. Out of a 10 rating scale, I give this a 7. I think it is. It hits somewhat personal, which I think makes it very memorable. Memorable enough and lasting power enough, but it is a small, simple story. How long is the movie? Let me see. It is an hour and 42 minutes, which seems like a lot, but I don't know how quite to describe it. It's paced in a way that it doesn't really feel long to me. I was just kind of sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying a nice little story that was unfolding. But back on track with the story. All right, I give it a 7 out of 10. Uh, she grows up, she comes of age and whatnot, and is soon to take over the shop, but she has a little bit of a temper, and she has to connect with people. All right, and not get angry all the time in the shop. And we got our Bernie over here, who doesn't like the water people very much. All right, they come in his shop, and he's a little on guard and upset. And when one of the water people, another one of the main cast, Wade Ripple, comes into the shop because of a mishap and also inspection, while he was inspecting something else. He ends up in the shop, and Bernie isn't very pleased. He calls the water people just water, which is a line in the film by Ember. It's like they're not just water, the water people. It's not. It's not laid on thick. I just want to say I don't want to give people the wrong impression that the show is. If you're watching this, I mean, I haven't seen it yet. The show isn't laying on thick the racism. I think that that is a small attribute of the story. It is definitely there, but it is not the wider narrative, is not a main point that is trying to really say anything about it. You know, the city isn't made with the water people in mind. All of them are all isolated to a small area right outside the city. You know, so it's very reminiscent of certain things, but the story doesn't really focus on it. It's like a set dressing. It's there. You can see it unless you're a very innocent flower or don't have the knowledge of these things. But it's not in your face. It's not a major point. Um, and throughout Ember trying to make sure that this shop doesn't get shut down and all of this, and there's a whole plot with water flowing into uh Ember Town because of some leak somewhere, you know, which is I won't go into too much spoilers. It is a simple little beautiful story. It doesn't go anywhere dark if you're looking for a mystery or a deeper like dark conspiracy or anything. There's nothing like that going on in the story. There's a leak somewhere, water's flowing in. It's dangerous for the fire people. But throughout this like rigmarole and Ember exploring the city and stuff and trying to not get her father's place shut down, uh, and a little bit of situations with that. This water boy, Rick Wade, starts, you know, falling for the fire girl. You know, this, and they're kind of, this got this like cute opposites attract little dynamic to them, which is kind of how the movie is advertised, which is, I feel as if the love story, while it probably takes up like it's front facing, I guess, in the middle point of the movie, and you know, nice and sweet and stuff. It's not really primary part of the story. I would say it's secondary or maybe even tertiary. All right, you have like a beginning and end, which is focused on Bernie and Cinder and how they left to form this new life, and Ember's relationship with that new life in this place where she was born, and a little bit of sprinkles of obviously the different way that the fire people might be treated because a good chunk of the population is plants, and there was this exhibit a flower that can survive in any environment, water in by a volcano, and you know, uh, Cinder was taking Ember when she was young to go see this flower, and they couldn't enter. All right, they had no fire people allowed, and Wade ends up working away along the way with his wind colleague slash friend to get her in there to see the flower. All right, and that's like kind of a middle point as well as meeting Wade's family and all this. And you know, Cinder's a hardworking, fiery gal from this immigrant family, and Wade's just this city water boy who's a big crybaby. His whole family are big crybabies. I think it's mentioned like once that he's rich, like one sentence. So it's a very much opposites attract yin yang little thing with them going on there. It's sweet. It's not. It's part of the story, but it's there among Cinder trying to figure herself out and save her father's shop. And that's truly what the story is about. It's about Cinder. It's about her relationship with her family and her truly, in a way, coming of age, becoming an adult in a sense of going out there and finding out what she wants to do with her life. Uh, and it's it's a beautiful little story. She discovers maybe she doesn't want to take on the family shop, but there's so much weight to the family shop. That's their culture. That's their legacy. That's her father's dream. And that's one of the focuses of the story. Does she want to be a little glass worker because Wade sees her make a beautiful little piece of art out of glass, melting sand. And does she want to do that? Yes. Wade's mom tries to offer her a job when she sees how good she is at it, which, kind of gets on her nerves a bit. She doesn't want to be just given this, as well as abandoning her father's shop. And that is incredibly relatable. Cinder is very relatable to me because personally, I never stayed in the US. My family did go to the US for a better life. My mother went, my aunts went, even my grandparents went, but they returned home. And they worked little jobs and stuff there. And I came back home as well. But my mother stayed to try and form a better life. So there's a little bit of a an attachment to this little story I have. And I watched it with my friend as well, who's Bengali American. And I'm sure she liked it. She said she liked the story as well. It seemed like I'm sure she can relate to the story as well. You know, though a difference between the both of us are actually she lives in the US and I don't know why I said obviously. She lives in the US. I went back to my little island in the Caribbean. One of the better islands. No offense. uh and there's a difference between her family and my family. But that's not my story to tell. She's stated it publicly, but it wouldn't be appropriate, I feel, for me to really talk about that. But with my family, they never truly got their dreams, I feel. But that's a story for another day, and really, I don't know enough, nor do I really want to say. But the story is lovely. I also really I'm fond of Bernie's character. He's a little extroverted, big old guy with a gut. All right. And he's all chuckling and laughing, and connecting with people, and a little bit of racist, just a little bit of racism, just a tad, with the water people. Uh, in his defense, they couldn't literally harm him by just being near him. Uh, so that's weird with the whole elements thing. But he wants to preserve his culture. There's a little blue flame that he brought with him from the Firelands, and he he wants to preserve that, and it's really nice because I kind of feel that. My family, they I feel personally that culture wise we're a bit watered down. uh Certain things like religion held strong, but culture wise I feel like if there's a little bit of it being watered down, which is hilarious considering this. I'm talking about elementals right now, and oh wow, I didn't think about that before. I didn't even make that pun on purpose. That's literally something said in the story. um the reason I said watered down was I was trying to avoid saying whitewashed, which I don't think is accurate, but uh generations removed. you know Caribbean culture is definitely a thing. We have the carnival, the calypso, soca, uh chutney, parang, kaiso, making pastels and pay me and tulum and chili baby and little dishes and stuff. But I feel as if it's going to go away with my generation. I look at my siblings and relatives and I'm like, of the oldest ones, how many of us are gonna really keep this going? And the younger ones, are they gonna keep it going? And when I think like of my par the grandparents of my parents or my grandparents, they came from other places, like certain parts of Africa and whatnot. And there's some European and there's some Irish somewhere, somehow, and some Northern Caribbean. That stuff is just kind of diluted, like gone, and I'm quite fond of culture. Uh, so, it's definitely something that it really, touched my heart a little bit about the story. And throughout this little journey, you know, Ember comes home, antics ensue, a little bit of a disaster happens, but she ultimately talks to her dad, and her dad mentions how uh she's ready to take over the shop. What she did to with all the deliveries and everything, the way she's worked hard throughout to carry on for the family. And he's ready to put up the sign, rename the shop in her name, and uh, he says how when he left, he gave the cultural greeting to his father, where he would raise up his hands with flame into the air and then bow low down to the floor for his father. And his father never greeted him. His father never gave him his approval. He said, if you leave, you he essentially shunned him from the culture and the family. And the story is about how much they sacrificed to make sure that their child can live a better life. And Ember, our main gal, has to live with that. They don't pressure her, at least not intentionally. You could go a roundabout way of arguing how telling you something your entire life is kind of pressure. but it's not intentional. And it's somewhat what? I'm leaving that in. It's somewhat reminiscent. Did I just fuse representative and reminiscent? It's somewhat reminiscent of my family, They never told me not to do something or that I have to do something, sincerely. When I was young and I wanted to be a police officer for some wild reason, never said anything. I have no memory of that. But when I said I wanted to be a president, and then I found out presidents don't really do that much. I want more. I want to be a prime minister. They never really said anything until I no longer wanted that dream. That's when they told me those jobs are stressful. They didn't want me to do that kind of thing because that kind of thing is very stressful, puts a lot of attention. You know, when I wanted to be a scientist and a chef, they never opposed. When I wanted to be, and any dream I went towards, they never went against it, and they somewhat encouraged me through my dreams. Not through my hobbies necessarily, though. When it comes to art, I never felt. I was never told not to do anything, but I never felt encouraged. Like a hey, good job with that. But I don't know. Uh, it's definitely a thing that in life growing up. I feel like any young adult will feel this throughout your home and your school and clubs or whatever events or your town. You gain a certain expectation of what you should do, or maybe what people might want you to do, even if they don't necessarily want you to do it. Or, how life works, well, I finished high school. Now I gotta go to college, right? That kind of thing. And it's really Ember dealing with that and living up to those expectations. Me personally, my grandparents had a large part in raising me. They were athletes. My grandfather was a weightlifter, and my grandmother would do long jumps and throw javelins. They never got into that kind of thing professionally, but they were very fit people all the way to their old age until they got little injuries and they would have their back pains and their knee pains and arthritis and all of that. And I see Bernie in this Pixar movie, which oh boy, Pixar's flopping. Ooh baby. I see Bernie in this little Pixar movie and he's coughing. He's tired. The work isn't as much for him. Recently, my grandmama was having an issue. She's actually recovering right now. She had a hernia. I remember when she got at least one of those. When she lift a bucket of wine, that's a little thing. I don't know which ethnicity or culture that came from, the wine making, but she lift a bucket of wine. And because these little shipping buckets were made to be stacked on each other, either the moisture or the residue or whatever caused the buckets to kind of suction together. So when she tried to lift one bucket up from the other, I think that's what caused it. She got that little hernia. And in my adulthood, my young adulthood, I see the strong grandmama who could lift me up and roll around with me and that stuff. not be able to do that anymore, to now in my young adulthood struggle with washing clothes and lifting them up out of the machine, or exerting herself because she decided to move around too much in the yard, pulling the hose to water the plants, and it's a hard thing to watch. And I look at this story and I see that. I see my family. And how do you live up to the sacrifices that they make? Even if they don't have an expectation of you, even if they don't see you as a failure, even if you're their little angel, all right? Or they just want you to be happy, all right? There's little you can do to disappoint them. Just take care of the younger ones if you're the old sibling, which is something that isn't touched on in the story because Ember's an only child. Would have been an interesting angle. That would have put probably more pressure, leaving the kid to go out and pursue her dream, but leaving her sibling. But she didn't have a sibling in the story. It was just her. That kind of thing makes you wonder. I've had great insecurity and anxiety and even a panic attack over how can I live up to my dearly departed grandfather. I'm not physically strong. All right, that's a very, traditionally masculine thing, but the true trust me, the women in my family were very strong as well. But I had a certain attachment. I still do, even though he's passed to my grandfather. And he know did things like drop out of school to take care of his brothers, and which might have been a good thing, might have been a bad thing, who knows? Past is past. Worked jobs in bakeries, worked in refineries, uh, oil refineries and stuff. Worked really hard throughout life with what he had to provide. Sometimes I would sit there and, after working in the yard and being completely laid out on the bed, and then waking up the next day still feeling bad, like I just really worked out at the gym or something. It makes me feel a little bit down because I've been like ill my entire life. And there's things like this right here. This is going on my main channel that I'm going to have be my sit down and talk channel. This is a long video. I've been talking for half an hour, but this isn't my commentary analysis. That will be another channel. This is just my sit down and talk. But through the passing of my father and what he left for me, I was able to have this computer. And through all of the hard work and some other things, I'm able to have certain resources available to me and knowledge available to me through the internet and such. And there's always something in the back of my head that's like, what are you doing? Use this to do something. Use this to provide. You know, go on the content grind. Why are you worrying about the morals and the pillars of fair use? And why not do reaction content? Why not have a Minecraft and Roblox channel? You actually like those games, you know. Why worry about all of the morals and the precautions you have to take for adjusting to a large kid audience and all of these things that I overplan and overthink and all of this? And like, why are you worrying about how people receive if you go on Kick or Rumble and try to use what's available to better your family. That isn't focused in the story. I feel like you would need a series to do that kind of thing. But it is in some way, somewhere you can see yourself in this little flame in the story, this little ember. How do you live up to the family? You know, what your family gave to make the life for you. Ultimately, in the end of the story, obviously it has a good ending. She tells her dad she didn't want to do the story and she didn't want to take up the she didn't want to take up the store and she's sorry and she wants to go into Glasgow and she knew it was his dream. And then the father holds her and says, no, no, no. You are my dream. You have always been the dream. Everything they've built up was for you. And by the end of the story, she gets together with Wade, obviously. But that part with the family, with her family, was the focus. Unfortunately, Pixar didn't advertise it like that, but that was the focus, the primary focus. And she goes off with Wade. She accepts the help. Accepting help is another thing you can go into. Uh, Sometimes pride, sometimes other things. I definitely can relate to not wanting help. Uh, Especially when the people that give you help want to be around you. I've dealt with that, and it's like I didn't have a pre-existing relationship with you before that was very strong. You might have had a relationship with other people in my family, but I didn't have one with you. I really don't want your help. And that leads into some of my other insecurities as well. It's not as much of a pride thing for me, but much as I feel a level of indebted or repay or someone else needs this more than me. Uh, which is kind of a vibe with the rest of my family sometimes. But she goes off in the story, our little Amber, and she goes off, takes the help from Wade's mom, and she goes off to the best glass making place in the world, and she goes off to work there and start her new life with Wade. And before she goes onto the boat, she turns around. Her father told her to go start her life, and she puts up her arms in the air with a little flame in her hand and bows down low to the floor. And her father does the same. I get a little bit of chills just rethinking about that moment. So touching, so beautiful. And her father gave her his blessing, unlike his father. Love and family letting you go and go out there and start your life. It is beautiful. And I really enjoyed that story. Little post notes here. I have a little bulletin point somewhere here. Apparently, luckily, after the TikTok and Twitter advertisements and everything, this did end up doing well in the box office. And apparently it did quite well in South Korea, which is nice because apparently the director's parents were South Korean immigrants. And the movie was kind of a love letter to them. So that is very nice. Um, And, you know, I enjoyed this movie 7 out of 10. It's not something that I will remember it, but it's not something that I would necessarily say I will show the next generation or like go around showing to people like I would something like Big Hero 6 or Up or the other Pixar films that I feel are more of a impact. But this was very personal to me. So perhaps I might share it with people who I feel would really vibe with it. Maybe I'll find a DVD of it somewhere because physical media is only. Uh, Interesting thing, I didn't realize how long Disney owned Pixar. Like I watched this on via Discord on Disney Plus, as I said, with a friend, and yeah, Disney's owned Pixar since 2006. It's a subsidiary of Disney. So that was since Cars came out, which is interesting. All those years ago, and also Cars is 17 years old at this point, almost 18. So yeah, that's ooh, that feels weird. Uh, Story you grew up with in your childhood, almost being like being that old already. Thank you very much for watching this video. Uh, Please leave a comment. I would like to know your thoughts. You don't gotta leave a like or anything like that. This channel isn't really for any of that. I'm more of a let me talk, let's talk channel, expressing myself in a way of communication. Yes, little sit down and chats. So yeah, what do you all think? I don't have a Discord or anything yet. I was thinking about making a matrix instead of a Discord because if you're new to me, which you probably are, or you're coming from a future channel of mine that's a lot more successful, and you already know, but I am a bit of a paranoid guy, super into open source and encryption and stuff, so I probably won't be making a Discord. And if I do, it probably would be for something specific like, oh, I made this game or mod or something. Something specific that's like open to the public. But yeah, I probably will make a matrix or something. Something that I trust more than Discord. Uh, I'm on various social medias. Let me just open my password manager and see which ones I'm on so far. I probably will be on all of them. Maybe. I'm really hesitant to use TikTok and Instagram, especially from this same IP address. Uh, Remembering a password and talking at the same time is quite difficult. Let's see. I could just pause for the report. That could work. Alright, I am on Mastodon, PixelFed, which I'm not sure how much I'll use, Blue Sky, uh, Odyssey, probably watching this there, YouTube, Rumble, Twitch. I don't know why I said Twitch, as if that's a place you can interact with me when I'm not live. Uh, yeah, that's it. All right, so you'll find me on Mastodon and Blue Sky. and Twitter at a later point. I'm trying to figure out ways I can sign up to those sites without giving my IP and stuff. But ultimately, I might be holding myself back with all of the pre-planning and preparation. But yeah, thanks for watching. How did you enjoy the movie? Did it hit personal with you as well? Is there any other movies that are maybe not as well received or was seen as like meh, you've seen it before, or bland that you really enjoy? I know something like Lukoa, I think it says, the skeleton one is well received by people, but that's one's like actually successful. I mean, this turned out to be successful as well too. Yeah, I'm basically just rambling at this point. Believe me, I'm not trying to like run up the clock of the video to hit a certain timestamp. I mean, I'm talking very quietly right now, and all of that is not the typical trend of YouTube videos. However, there is like a game theory, a film theory rather, that Matt had just released that people might be becoming more accustomed or be looking out for this kind of content more. Uh, Now after the burnout from the TikTok and Mr. Beast and all of that super let's go, adrenaline, dopamine hit type of content, and they might be looking for these more slow talking, which is interesting because there was the whole podcast trend sandwiched right before the big short trend. But yeah, thanks a lot.